Trader Main here. Wanted to do a quick interview with Zoran Coley. I've been getting a lot of questions in my Discord on Twitter about indicators, other ways of trading. As many of you guys know, I kind of preach price action as all you need. But I mean, of course, it's silly to put your blinders on and not open yourselves up to other things. I think there's a lot of ways to skin the cat when it comes to trading. And the way that Zoran does it is quite interesting. And I get a lot of comments asking about it. So I figured, why not get it straight from the horse's mouth instead of me trying to explain it? So going to have him on here, ask some questions. We'll put this up on YouTube, and he'll tell you how to get in contact with him. I know he has a great Telegram channel. He's also very active on Twitter. So just a generally very nice guy. So Zoran, welcome.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me on, brother.
Of course. So let's start with where you're from, Zoran. I've never met a Zoran before.
So I'm actually from Serbia originally, but I divide my time between the East Coast and Serbia.
Okay, so I was just over in not Serbia, but I was close. I was in Slovenia, I was in Croatia. I was kind of up in that area. Didn't end up getting there to Serbia. I did meet some Serbian girls. They weren't very nice, but they were very
I'm sure they were
attractive. Is
gorgeous,
that
though.
common?
I'm sure they were gorgeous, though. But yeah, sometimes they can be a little bitchy.
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't working. The guy who had the bottle at the bar, they were a lot nicer to him. But that's okay. I was on the traveler's budget. So let's just start with kind of just like a brief intro. How did you come about trading? Were you trading crypto first, other markets? How long you've been doing it? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure thing. So, got into crypto late 2013, quite literally during the Mt. Gox top. I got exposure to crypto early on from using the Silk Road for more nefarious purchases.
Sure.
That was kind of my entrance into the space, being introduced to Bitcoin, seeing the volatility, and saying, "Hey, I can make a few bucks here and there if I just bought and hodled, so to speak."
Yeah.
So 2013 came around, 2013, early 2014, basically put whatever my net worth at the time was into Bitcoin, and saw it crash all down on me as everyone else did in the space. And I was pretty angry at myself and I was angry at the market. So my entry into trading didn't really start till 2015. I played it around a little bit in Forex in 2014, but nothing really worth mentioning. I wasn't any good, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
So I lost a lot of Bitcoins actually trying to learn to trade, more so than I'd like to admit. But 2015 was where I kind of decided that I had lost enough money and I was mad enough at the market and I wanted to master this market. I wanted to get revenge. Revenge trading is probably the worst, uh, you know, tool or definition I can use for this, but that's kind of where I started. And
Revenge learning, though. You're revenge learning.
correct. That's a
Yeah.
great way of actually spitting that in a nice educational manner. I like that. So 2015, I really take a deep dive down the rabbit hole. I start watching charts 24/7, 365. I'm in college classes just staring at charts, and then just looking at videos on YouTube. So it was all a lot of trial and error and lots of pain, blood, and tears, to say the least.
Awesome. So, I mean, we kind of have a little bit of a relation in that sense. I mean, I got through Bitcoin a little differently. I wasn't buying, fireworks. That's why I imagine you were buying on Silk Road. But I got actually brought in from a friend who always would invite me to these like pyramid schemes. Every time he's like, "You got to come to this meeting with me, man. You got to come. It's awesome. We can make all this money." And I'd go, and like 5 minutes into it, they would pull up the pyramid that's not a pyramid, and I'd be like, "All you got to do is sign up your friends." So I was very skeptical of anything this guy had to say. So sure enough, when he said he discovered the future of money, I was like, "Yeah, okay, bud." And that was early. That was in like 2012, and then about I think it must have been a year and a half later when Bitcoin was kind of on that first bull run. It had 10x from when he first told me about it. I was like, okay, holy shit, maybe there's something here. So I joined Twitter, and I just started buying everything that anyone with any amount of followers said. I was owning barbecue coin,
I
fly
love
coin, all these random coins that are obviously not around anymore. And similar to you, for me, I had a brief peak where I was up on paper. pretty good money. To the point where I like quit my job at the bank. You know, I have like a finance and accounting background, so I had a job at a big bank here in Canada, and my parents like, "Oh, our son's got his career," and I'm like, "Hey guys, I'm quitting to trade," because I think I had the equivalent of like, I don't know, $40,000, let's say, and at the time at my age, I thought that was enough to live. So, and I was like, I'm just gonna trade and make more. And then yeah, saw it crash and burn, and kind of did the same thing. I didn't want to look at charts for a while. And then eventually 2014, 2015, I kind of revenge learned as well and started, figuring out, okay, started with Forex, got familiar. And then I said, okay, I want to make some money back. So, interesting similarities there. So did you always start like, so me personally, I started trading completely different than I do now. Were you always using Ichimoku? Is that a recent development for you?
So I hadn't always been using Ichimoku, but I did find Ichimoku to be quote unquote my system. So I really dove the first year of trading. It was basically kind of similar to you, just price action concepts, simple support and resistance, the basics essentially, right? And then I tried to find the holy grail, right? Something that was going to guaranteed make me money every single time.
Sure.
I'm still on that search, but now I'm very much more well aware that it actually does not exist. But Ichimoku seemed to fit the bill for the lifestyle and type of trader I wanted to be. So I found that taking swings and positional trades, were easier on my lifestyle. I can actually go have a life outside of trading. So that was the biggest reason why I was attracted to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love that point because I myself, I like to focus on the H4 and above only. For that exact reason, I run a business and, I have a girlfriend and I have a family, and I've been down the rabbit hole of like the 15-minute chart, the 5-minute chart.
Oh yeah.
And like, I'm a believer that, I mean, technically, I think you can use the same concepts on any time frame as long as maybe your hourly is your high time frame and your 5 minutes, your execution time frame. But to me, I just can't fathom doing it. Like, I don't want to have to stare at the chart all day. And like, my advice to anyone who's trying to learn is zoom out, right? Like, especially if you have a day job or whatever, and you're trying to see if trading could be something you could do. Well, if there's, 8 hours at the office desk, well, if you're trading on the 4 hour, that's only two candles, right? So all of a sudden you have all this more time to, like you said, kind of have a life and enjoy your lifestyle. I think one thing that's very common with this space is unhealthy habits.
Oh yeah.
Right, and I've been guilty of it, as I'm sure you have when you're
Oh
learning,
yeah.
because
More
it's,
so than I like to admit.
yeah, it's like you can go down a deep, deep, deep hole in terms of just, next that you've been staring at the screen for so long, you're not going outside, you're not talking to anyone. So I like that. The swing trading, I think that's great advice for everyone. You still want to have a life. It's funny, all those Forex scammers that I'm sure you've seen on Instagram, they're like, oh, I'm trading at the beach. And I don't think you should be doing that, but like you should still be able to go to the beach. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
trading is like a very solitude, you're in a room by yourself. So you got to get out there, right? So in terms of, how you merge time frames. So you're talking about you focus on, trading the high time frame. So sometimes you'll reference, maybe the H4 or the H12, the H8, whatever, but the Ichimoku cloud is different on each. So how do you kind of, pick what time frame to use for your analysis versus entry? Are you using the Ichimoku on the high time frame for direction, and then the low time frame you're using something else, or how do you make that work?
So it's actually a beautiful thing that the Ichimoku on its own is basically a standalone system, right? So the time frame is always contextual. So a setup you may be seeing on the 4 hour or the 6 hour, I actually tend to use the 6 hour more so than the 4 hour because I have a paranoia that all the market makers are all looking at the 4 hour as well, right? And painting things that I just want to see. So when it comes to looking, for example, at the 6 hour, but you're looking at the cloud. Now, the way my cloud is set up at the, quote unquote, doubled crypto settings, what I'm essentially looking at is 6 hour price action transcribed on a 12 hour Ichimoku cloud. Now, just by doubling the settings of any indicator, you're essentially smoothing it out and
Mhm.
allowing yourself to basically visualize price action at a slower pace, which
Mhm.
creates obviously less false positives, less false breakouts, and it forces you to be selective with your capital at the end of the day. So when it comes to actual analysis, I really like to stick to the 12 hour. That tends to be my sweet spot for assuming direction and kind of positioning myself. But the execution usually comes down to the 6 hour. The reason being is, when you get that heightened look, seeing the 12-hour cloud on 6-hour price action, it gives you almost a quicker opportunity to get a right entry.
Yeah, that's nice. So I mean the price action allows you to enter on a, less more candles, right? More
Yep,
information, but the 12 hour
exactly.
is your signal. Okay, very interesting. So I guess that kind of ties into this next question. Someone asked, what are your settings for default versus crypto?
Yeah, so I mean, the standard settings are, 9, 26, 52. For crypto, we like to consider it as a 24/7 market. So we have the 10, 30, 60, 30. But now, again, like I spoke before, if you double the first three, you're essentially smoothing out the indicator and doubling the time that the cloud is actually being projected on the time frame that you're looking at. So 20, 60, 120, 30 are my quote unquote doubled crypto settings.
Okay, very interesting. So I think that's going to be super. We're going to see all of Twitter using the double time frame Ichimoku as they do. I do find it very funny. It seems like crypto Twitter has a very kind of flavor of the month
Oh, yeah.
kind of style, and I think you must have some relation to him. Is 33 Moku. Josh,
Yeah.
I think is his
Josh,
name. Did you
yeah,
learn from
Josh
him at
Wolford.
all or watch any of his stuff?
So interestingly enough, I did learn a hefty amount from Josh. Actually, the 2060, 120, 30 settings are directly from him. So that's, shout out to him. But his mentor and also my mentor that I consider a mentor would be Chaos Trader 63, who's actually, the quote unquote Forex legend of Ichimoku. So both of us learned under him. And he's kind of the OG of Ichimoku itself.
Okay, and is all his content free? Did you pay for it?
I have never paid for a single piece of content in my life. I know he does offer some sort of paid Ichimoku courses, but he has so much free stuff that are hours and hours long that, I mean, you can go through all that and then pair that with chart watching, and I think you'll be in a very good spot.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same mindset. So, I mean, I've paid for lots of stuff like Tom Dante stuff, some of ICT stuff, but I've honestly, for me, people ask me, it's like, oh, did you do ICT's mentorship? I did. The most valuable stuff I found from him was the stuff I learned for free, funnily enough. And then obviously, like you said, just chart time. I think that's something that people underestimate with trading. They want this get rich quick kind of thing. And so my always, thoughts with certain indicators, people just want, oh, well, the MA's crossed, I buy.
Yep.
The Ichimoku cloud twisted, so I buy or I sell.
Yep.
And I still think that people kind of discount how much time you still have to put in. It's not like you're just buying because something on the Ichimoku has happened. There's other pieces to it, and you got to kind of just watch eventually. And I don't think a lot of people are willing to put that time in. I don't know if you tracked it or have any idea, but if you started kind of trading 2015, about 5 years, how long would you say you were kind of fucking around, tweaking before you started getting consistent?
Yeah, so I really think, I mean, first of all, with any craft, I mean, any expert in their craft will tell you it takes at least a minimum of 10,000 hours practicing your craft to get anywhere close to mastering it or grasping it fully, right? So
Sure.
I definitely put in my 10,000 plus hours of chart watching. So as daunting as that may seem for most people to stare at a chart for 10,000 hours over the course of the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's absolutely necessary. And I want to say that at least the first 6 months to a year was really the tweaking phase for me because I was so gun ho that I was going to learn this market and master it like a video game that I put in 10, 12, 16-hour days of just staring at charts. So it's really the time. It doesn't matter about the days that go by. It's really the time you spend sitting at your computer, but also doing, honest learning. You can't just be staring at a chart aimlessly. You need to have a concept and a theory that you're trying to basically try out.
Sure. Yeah, I think people are not systematic enough in anything that they do, and trading is the same way, but it goes for so many things in life. You can go to the gym and lift a bunch of weights, but if you don't have a system, if you're not doing certain exercises in a certain order, going up in weight over time, tracking, having data, it's useless, right? You could waste a lot of time. And I think in crypto, it's very fast twitch, if that even makes
Yep.
sense,
No, it
because,
does.
you're making money on the internet. When I first started, I was like, oh my God, I'm printing my rent check online
Literally.
with a few clicks of the button. So it's very easy, I think, to get caught up into that. I'm in a lot of discords, and one of the best things for my learning was I got burned so bad in 2013. When I started learning, I wasn't on Twitter or anything. I was just me and charts and nothing else and YouTube videos. So I feel like it's very easy to get distracted these days, being on Twitter, having all of these discords, you're getting all these notifications, you're getting all this shit going on. And like you said, you might just be staring at a chart, but are you actually committing anything to memory? Are you actually, have some sort of system in place with what you're trying to learn? So would you say after your first year, you were making money? Were you making money halfway through? What would you say? When did you kind of start making enough money that you're like, okay, I could do this. This could be a career?
So the beauty was that I found BitMEX really off the get-go when I got really deep into the rabbit hole of trading. So I want to say that the first year was honestly just about breaking even for me. I knew that from the get-go. I wasn't expecting to be this, millionaire, etc. So the first 12 months, or actually first 9 to 12 months, was all about losing less money and breaking even. But after I really hit it was actually the 13-month mark of my official, quote unquote trading debut that I actually started making serious money. And I think that only came about because I started understanding the concept of leverage and its use cases, right? So everyone on Twitter likes to talk about I'm 25x, I'm 50x, I'm 100x. The truth is it's irrelevant, right? Leverage is literally irrelevant because it comes down to your position size.
Yes.
And once I created that system, that's when I really started to print money excessively.
Yeah, it sounds like someone read Crypto Cred's study guide. No, it's one of the most common things I get in my Discord. People are like, "Main, what leverage should I use?" It says, "Well, it doesn't matter. What is your risk, right? And then calculate your position size based on where your stop's going to be relative to your entry. Then where's your target going to be, and then that's all that really matters." So I guess this kind of ties into the next question. I mean, answer this how you want it. Could be a little too personal. Someone wants to know where you got the capital to trade. He says, he's seen you post screenshots with, really big position sizes. Was that organic? Did you punch in a bunch of money at the start and blow it up? How'd that happen for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not too personal. When I first got into crypto, I had around $20,000 to my name in 2014 buying at $800 a coin. So you can kind of do the math there yourself on how many original Bitcoins I bought.
Yeah.
I did, fortunately, I saved up from birthday checks and Christmas checks, etc. And I did dollar cost average in the low 400s as we kind of went lower. And kind of just had capital from there. So it really was around, I want to say 30, 40, like you similarly, 30, 40,000. And from there, it was all about using your money wisely, allocating it to only literally the bread and butter setups that I learned to identify after breaking even so many times, and really learning, right? So it's interesting because yes, leverage is irrelevant, but the one thing that I think most traders don't talk about is knowing when to size the fuck up and use leverage as a risk tool for increasing risk. I don't preach it, I don't recommend it, but I'm very adept. I've learned over the years exactly when I can lever up and really let my trades run.
Yeah. I think, to kind of add on to that, some people, they always say, oh, how much should I risk? 2%, 1%, 5%. I have different amounts that someone will say, Main, what do you risk? It depends on the setup.
Exactly.
I have setups that, it's on the H4, but I know because I've been doing this for 6 years now, that my expectancy on this setup is this. And the hit rate is whatever, and therefore I'm gonna risk 2%. And I have setups where I'm like, this is my home run, so I'm gonna go 5. You know what I mean? If I get it wrong, I had one. I think when we were dipping, I made the mistake of trying to call the bottom a little too early.
Me too, don't worry.
I think you were with me pretty publicly on Twitter. And then we hit my level, and I think you had the same level, and then we had that spike to 10.4. And I'm like, holy shit, we fucking nailed it. And then it started bleeding out right away. So then as we started bleeding back down, we came back to about 8,000 to 8.2. And I was like, okay, this is going to be the higher low. And so I went big on that one. And
I remember you actually talked about it on Charles' podcast. I remember listening to it.
Yeah. So I went big on that one because I was like, this is it. And again, I got it wrong. I have no setup that's 100%. It's impossible. But that was a setup for me that, you know what? Yes, I lost 5% if I'm wrong. But if I'm right on that one, like, holy shit.
Right.
So I do agree with you. I mean, you got to obviously manage risk, especially when you're learning. Don't size up. When you lose a trade, don't size up to try and make it back. Absolutely not. but you're going to have setups, at least if you're paying attention and collecting the right data, that, hey, this is a high hit rate for me. So when I see this one, like for you, maybe it's, a certain Kumo twist and then certain things in price action. Like you love the end to ends.
Yep.
You know when to go big. So I mean, that's awesome. So for those that are asking, it started with 20,000. And 5 years sounds like a lot of time, but if you're turning 20,000 into $1 million over 5 years in any other market, that's incredible, or in anything in life. But I feel like crypto has just kind of fucked everyone's head where they're like, yeah, but I had an altcoin that went 50x. And it's like, yeah, but that's not normal.
Yeah.
Like, did you buy the bottom and sell the
It's not
top?
normal anymore. Exactly.
Yeah, so I think we're a little spoiled. We're a little spoiled in crypto. Okay, bisexual crypto has just asked how many blowjobs you've gotten in 24 hours. I know you're married, so feel
I'm
free to.
actually I have a girlfriend. I'm not married. I don't know if she wants me to say it, but probably four and a half.
That's
The half
pretty.
count.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right,
Yeah.
very cool. So, some guy wants to have a drink with you in Serbia. I'd say hard pass. Funnily enough, I met up with some people while I was traveling through Europe in the summer through Twitter. I was a little nervous at first. I'm like, this is kind of weird. But I mean, everyone I've met so far through Twitter in person has been awesome. No one's been weird or creepy or tried to rob me or anything. I met up with like some guy in Bosnia. I was like, this might be a little sus, but
The Balkan people seem to be really nice, dude. The one thing I love about the culture is that everyone's very homey and friendly, and they treat you basically like you're the master guest. You get the master guest room when you come, and you get the best wine, the best food. Everyone's really familial there. So I think you're safe when it comes to the Balkans.
yeah, well, I mean, if you're from the West, like I am, and you watch any sort of action movie, the weird guy from the Balkans is usually the evil villain, right?
Yep.
So I was there, and it was exactly like you said. I mean, they invited his mom, cooked me dinner. Like it was amazing. I was like, oh, this is actually, it's funny what the media will do, and how it can kind of fuck with your perception of a place that you've never been. And it was
Agreed.
beautiful. Like, oh my God, I don't know if you've been to Slovenia, but I was like, holy shit, is it nice here?
It definitely is. I mean, the whole Balkans, dude. You go to Croatia, the beaches, and
Yeah,
everything.
Ljubljana was insane. I did not expect that.
Ljubljana is a great place to go. Actually, it's a
Yeah.
great place to party. Surprisingly, too.
Yeah, I would highly recommend. So, I think so. Someone has another question. You may have kind of answered this, but why did you choose to master Ichimoku Cloud as opposed to any other tools? And what's been the biggest advantage in your eyes?
Yeah, so Ichimoku is just a really good standalone indicator for beginners, in my humble opinion. I really think, you talk about, even as you were saying earlier, it's going to the higher time frames, taking more swing trades. This allows you the opportunity to learn, right? You're basically digesting 4-hour information. Ichimoku gives you basically a template to follow that, hey, when this happens, there's an X% chance that that's going to happen. And it's a very clear invalidation, it's a very clear setup, and it's a very clear target. So it's really useful for basically learning the basics, as I like to call it. And
Mhm.
then ultimately, it's about having a life, dude. I can stare at charts all day, or I can go do whatever I want for a week because most of my trades are on the 1 week to 1 month, trade duration.
Yeah, what I love about your feed is you don't take that many trades. There's so many people, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like, Bit Dealer is one of my homies, but
Yep.
he's seemed to have mastered, this kind of like 5 to 15 minutes range trade where we have a impulse, then we range, and then you deviate the top of the bottom, then he gets in a trade, and he's been
Yep.
crushing it. But that's just not me, right? Like that means I got to be at the computer when that happens and like
Exactly.
watching. And I like what you said about kind of defining the basics, risk, where's your stop, where's your invalidation, because I think for a lot of people, especially when you're learning, and I had this problem too, is where are you wrong? That's one of the hardest things to know. Is it below this wick? Is it below this low? Should I put my stop here because that gives me a 2 to 1? And if you can have something that, like you said, is kind of standalone, makes it very clear, I think that could be a great tool for someone who's trying to learn and be like, this is where you're wrong.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, it comes down to the fact that if I can take a few trades and net, a year's worth or 4 years worth of salary, I like that. I like that idea of that, right? So that's always what drew me to it. I can take really nice swing, really nice positional trades, lever up, and then sit on them. And the worst thing I'll do is pay a shit ton in funding.
Yeah. Yeah, I took like a long on the ETH Quanto
Oh yeah.
unfortunately. I mean, it ate a lot of my profits. But I mean, if you're playing it on the high time frame like I was, the setup was on the 3 day chart for my entry. It's like, you're gonna eat some funding, but that's the cost of playing, right?
Oh, that's literally what I called it. I had a 2 day edge to edge setup on ETH from 130s all the way to 282, and I think my fees or my funding ate up 22% of my profits.
Yeah.
That's just the cost of playing. When you're gonna net a 10x plus trades, you're just gonna have to pay it.
Yeah, I think the funding is less of a fact when you're doing the high time frame. It's less of a factor because you know that it's gonna, if it goes your direction. I mean, if you lose the trade and you're getting killed on funding, I guess that's the double whammy. But so okay, great. So someone has kind of an addition to the earlier question about your size, and you kind of touched on this already. How long did it take you to kind of first fine tune your system? Did you start with small size and then build up? Did you kind of train going small size, and then once you got confident, then you started risking your 2 to 5%? I think a lot of people like your style because, like you've said, you're trading high time frame, you're trading big size, but they're big swings. So how long did it take you to kind of start sizing up? Was it something where you're like, okay, I'm trading now, I'm risking 2% a trade, or did you start at half of that and then work your way up?
I like to say that I still haven't perfected my system, and I'm not sure that I ever will. I think you need to constantly be iterating and improving it. Otherwise, it stays stagnant, and, the edge or alpha that you have really erodes itself quickly. So, even today, like when I get the more I get comfortable trading, the more I size up. The more I see patterns I've seen before, the more I size up. So, I really started at having no idea how to size a position, and that's something I've learned over the past, I want to say, 2.5 years really well. But it started really at 1% risk, right? I
Mhm.
had no way how to size any trade differently. It's just a static 1%. And then as I started adding in some Ichimoku, I guess, setups, I started sizing up 2%, 3%, 3.5%. I always tiered it in a way where I'd grade the trade on a scale of A, B, or C, right? Is this a C level trade because there's only two confluences? Is it a B level because there's three or four? Or is it an A or A plus, right? Where there's six confluences, it's a bread and butter, it's a home run, like you were saying earlier. So it takes time to develop that. I want to say I'm still working on that. I'm not even going to pretend that I'm perfect at it. But over the past 2.5 years, I've probably gotten very comfortable with the sizing itself. But initially, for the first year or two, it was just about a static 1% risk because you don't know what your bread and butter setup is until you have a larger data set, right? So that's why I think at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to help craft or define your system unless you implement a trading journal. I can't stress that enough. I write it like crazy every single day, even if I'm not in a setup and I'm just taking, pretend setups or trades I would have taken but don't actually end up risking on. I think having a journal is paramount to actually start crafting an actual system.
Yes. Do you use like Edgewonk? Are you
Yep.
manual? Yeah.
Edgewonk, I've been using it for the past 3.5 years. Absolutely great. Couldn't recommend it enough. It's definitely the one tool that I can't live without when it comes to trading.
Yeah. I used to do type out my notes. I would take screenshots of everything. But then
Yep.
once I started using Edgewalk, it became so much easier to search your data and visualize it different ways. It's you can't compare unless you're like an absolute fucking wizard with Excel.
Yep. Yep.
I'm gonna be 30 in the summer. And I used to think I was super tech savvy, not anymore. Edgewalk makes it
No
very
way.
easy. And I
Yep.
agree completely. I think a lot of people miss, a guy like, I'll bring up BitDealer again. A reason why I think he's progressed so quickly is because of how data driven. I mean, he's doing that market science thing. He's so focused on the data and the numbers. And I tell this to people all the time in my videos, in my Discords, on Twitter. If you don't have enough data, you have nothing. It's got to be actionable. You can't make any actionable decisions unless you have the data to back it up. You can't see a
Correct.
setup 10 times and be like, oh, it works 10 times. Could be a blip. That's the thing. And that's why I don't think people realize it could be, like you said, a false positive where you're like, oh, this
Yep.
worked like 9 out of 10 times. It's like that 9 out of 10 times could be an absolute blip if we're
Anomaly.
talking about 1,000. I completely agree. Absolutely, you should have a journal, and that way you can also see your progress. It just makes everything easier. It also keeps you accountable. I think it's very easy in Twitter to kind of be, or to crypto, sorry, to be a little bit degenerate. The the exchanges are not very robust. Like if you, I don't know if you ever traded stocks and options and I know you mentioned a little bit of Forex, but Thinkorswim is so much more of a robust platform than BitMEX. It tracks a lot of data for you versus, a site like BitMEX. I mean, Edgewonk is a perfect thing to add in if you're not using it. Hit me up. I do believe I have a referral code from ages ago that I could post on or send to anyone on Twitter who's interested. I think I have like up to 20 and I've only used a few slots. So adding to that last question, what is your mindset like? So, as Persia mentioned, you're obviously still pretty young. You're trading big size. You're dealing with high time frame swings. How do you deal with it mentally if things aren't going according to plan? So you enter a big swing trade, you're in big size, and all of a sudden you're underwater.
Yeah, when it comes to, quote unquote big size, I think it's really relative. I've built up the portfolio I have over the last several years, and what may seem like big size to most is still just a fixed percentage of my portfolio. So once you start looking at a trade and start literally labeling it as big and you really start attaching emotions to it, I think that's where you run into trouble. So the first things first is that it really has to be, like we talked about, data driven and basically a fixed risk percentage based on what your system tells you. If you don't have a system, well, you should really start at the drawing board and start crafting one. But when you're in these, quote unquote larger trades where, it's several hundred to a couple $1,000,000 of profit swinging up and down, you really need to adopt this set and forget mindset. I love that because like either I'm going to be wrong or right, and that's going to force me to improve and tweak my discipline levels. I think apart from the actual setting and forgetting, meditation is such a huge part of my life. I can't preach it enough. I almost wish there was like a meditation crypto Twitter community because it's the one thing I think, even if you're a swing trader, a scalper, whatever the case may be, it helps ground you. Meditation is the simplest way that we essentially train our mind. And if you're training your brain looking at setups and trades, why aren't you also calming the mind and making it as focused as possible to, perform at the highest level possible?
Absolutely. So I've just recently got into meditate. That's not true. I guess specifically, I've had kind of attempts at it in the past.
Yep.
I'm very kind of like ADD. I have a hard time sitting still. I might find that my mind races. So I used to smoke a bunch of weed. Like I was a big time stoner, and I found that it actually made it very hard to meditate because you're fucking baked. You know what I mean? So I'm meditating, and the next thing I know, I'm like in the fridge and I'm making like taquitos. So I've stopped smoking weed. I did a break for about 3 months last year. And then during that 3 months, I'd kind of gotten into, kind of just stilling myself. And I didn't really have a system or a way to do it. I would just kind of sit there in the dark and try and just focus on my breathing. And it kind of it kind of worked. It helped me. I'd do it before bed and I'd fall asleep a lot easier. So instead of like watching Netflix and then trying to fall asleep with a screen on, I would just kind of sit there for a few minutes and just focus on my breathing, unwind, and then pass right out. Then I started smoking weed again. So I stopped again Jan 1. And I think I'm going to try and stick with it. And I've downloaded, it's called Headspace.
Yep, that's what I've been using.
Yeah, and it seems pretty cool. I've just been kind of fooling around with it, very preliminary, but definitely something I want to get into because I do think there are a lot of similarities. Like you said, when you're trying to learn a new skill, you have to have control over your mind, over your emotions. One thing I tell all new traders, when I first started, I'm at a point now where I can tweak my trades. Like I'll trail my stop, I'll adjust my targets, I'll compound, I'll do this, that, and the other thing. But when I first started, I was set it and forget it. It's like when I'm entering this trade, and again, I completely agree with you. Like people who say big is like it's got an emotional kind of attachment to it, that word. It should be relative to your $500,000 Bitcoin position might be big to someone if your account is 1 Bitcoin. But if your account is 50 Bitcoins, it's nothing. So it's all relative. It should just be a set amount. So technically the emotional aspect of the trade shouldn't change because the amount of risk is fixed. But when I first started, what I said is once I enter the trade, it's either going to my target or it's going to my stop. For no other reason am I exiting this trade. And if for some reason I'm underwater and I want to close it early, or if I'm just up a bit and I want to exit, or it goes beyond my target, it's at my target and I'm like, oh, maybe it's going to go a little higher. Why did I take the trade in the first place? Because if I'm not confident in enough that I'm not wrong till I get stopped out, why am I exiting before my stop when I'm slightly underwater, right? You put your invalidation there for a reason. That's where you're wrong. So
Exactly.
until it hits that, so I think that's a great piece of advice, especially if you're new. And I mean, obviously, if even if you're not new, it's the way I think of it. Kevin O'Leary, who's like on Shark Tank,
Yep.
he says I like to put my money out into it's either coming back as more money or it's coming back dead. So there's
I
only two
agree.
ways that you see it, right? That 2% is either coming back as four or it's gone. And once you kind of break it down to that level, I think it removes a lot of that emotional aspect to it. Because if you're feeling emotional, then you get into that whole song and dance, you're probably risking too much. If you're sitting there sweating, looking because you're a few points underwater, like you have too much on. Like if my stop goes to, and it's so funny. I mean, it's impossible
Exactly.
to translate on Twitter, but every time you get stopped out, you're wrecked, right? Trader May got wrecked. It's like,
Yep.
yeah, I lost 2% of my account. It fucking sucks. Like, I'm not stoked on it, but it is what it is. I like to focus on my trades from a risk first perspective. I like to know exactly what I'm going to lose before I enter the trade. If you start thinking of it, in my opinion, is like, well, if I win, this is how much I'm going to make. I think you kind of are setting yourself up for failure. At least that's
Agreed.
how I do it. I go, okay, what's the worst case scenario? I lose $1,000, $5,000, whatever it is. There, now I'm happy. Okay, it's gonna return double or more. Then I'm happy to enter, and then you just let it ride.
Exactly. It's all a numbers game at the end of the day. And I think people forget that you can't really run from the math and the numbers, the percentages, or the statistics. It's hard coded. You're risking a fixed percentage. The ratio is whatever the ratio is. You're not going to run away from that. And if you start thinking, yeah, I'm going to win X, Y, and Z, that's because your risk is X, Y, and Z higher. You just
Yeah,
have to keep all that in mind.
yeah. I think it's so funny. I mean, Twitter, crypto specifically, is such a like microcosm of that whole Wall Street cheat sheet. Like you can see it every day within a 5 minute pump of $100, or over the year of the bear market and the bull
Yeah.
market, and everything is just magnified. And just you can see the way people talk, and in my opinion, I can see how people tweet, and I can kind of tell if they trade or not, just because of the way that they react to moves happening, to getting stopped out, whatever it is. I'm like, it's usually the calmest people who actually know what the fuck that they're doing. And it's kind of counterintuitive to what you see on there, but exactly, it's all math, it's all statistics, and if you don't think it is, you're doing it wrong. So couple more for you here, and then I have some kind of like bigger kind of picture questions. Gonna ask you your year-end target, all that kind of fun stuff, so we can
Love
pin
it.
it on your wall. And if you're wrong, the internet will just rain down on you.
I'm
Um,
ready.
so this guy's interested in what's your view on mechanical trading versus discretionary trading, and how would you relate this to traders that are still at the early stage of their career?
Yeah, so I mean, mechanical trading to me is obviously automated. I am still, by definition, a retail trader, a discretionary trader. I
You're not
do
institutional money, bro?
no, I know as much as people like to
Fuck.
think. No, I really consider myself a champion of the retail because that's who I am. That's where I started. I don't use fancy algos. I don't pretend like I'm constantly catching tops and bottoms. I just don't. I do like exposure to the trend. I think as a newer trader starting your career, automation is definitely something to look into. If you have the Python skills, I think that's definitely a skill to learn, right? But if you're just a manual click and trade trader, discretionary, that's why you zoom out to the higher time frames. You can't react as fast as automated algorithms can on these lower micro time frames. Maybe you can, maybe you're a savant. Awesome. I personally can't. So when it comes to basically deciding between the two, I think starting as a discretionary trader early on in your career, learning the basics. I always come back to the basics at the end of the day. And as long as you can master the basics, you can start learning how to build automated tools. So that's, I guess, a long-winded answer to that question.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, you got guys like Gaines, Gainsy, who's the homie. Shout out to him, who's created all these algos for free. I know, like another guy like Cuban Taco has a lot
Yep,
of
yep.
automated stuff. I think that to me, that stuff is like Chinese. And sorry to any of my
Yeah,
Chinese
exactly.
viewers, but Chinese is like fucking Chinese to me. It means I have no fucking clue. Um, so to me, I don't get it. More power to you. I wish I could have a system that just buys when I think it's a good buy and sells and does it all. But I'm the same way as you. I'm of the mindset where it's like I try and my trading has a direct the success of my trading has a direct correlation to the time frames I'm working with. And when I was getting fucked up in kind of August and September, it's because I was entering on the hourly, taking longs in a downtrend. And I go back to my notes, and I think as early as June, the end of June, when we made that final spike to like 14, and then we made a low, and then we made a lower high at like 12 and a half. When we broke that low at 10.5, I had in my notes, I said, we've now made bearish market structure. And then I spent the next 2 months taking longs on the low time frame because obviously I'm zoomed in. And so for me, when I first learned, I actually used to use 2 moving averages. Like a high one, I can't even remember what they were. I think I used like a 20 and 100 or something, like a 50 and 100. But basically what would happen is when they would cross and they were stacking, is what I learned the term was, meaning moving away from each other. That means we're trending hard. And I would only take trades when we were trending and I would do that on like the weekly or the daily. And I'm saying, okay, we're trending bullishly. The moving averages on the daily have crossed bullish and are stacking. They're moving away. And I would only look for long setups. And then as soon as they were touching or crossing or not stacking, I just didn't trade. And it was amazing that simple rule was like, okay, unless we're above the lower time frame moving average and they're moving away from each other, I'm only looking for longs. I'm trading with the trend, and it makes your life so much easier. And I made a post about this. I got a bunch of interaction, right? It's like you can get longs in a downtrend. Absolutely. There's going to be retraces, but you're fighting. The probability of that working is lower, right?
Exactly.
And
fighting the trends.
Yeah, the trend is going to shift on the low time frame first, but if we've made a higher high on the weekly, like, yeah, you might catch a $200 dump, but you're going to miss on that $1,000 pump. So absolutely, for new traders, I think the best thing to do is learn how to spot the trend on the high time frame. And then any trades you got to ignore anything that is counter trend, and you'll see your win rate go up seriously in a big way. So yeah, great advice there.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add to that actually is, the fact that people are not very good at differentiating between ranging markets and trend-bound markets.
Sure.
When you're range-bound, that's when you're chopped up the most, when you're using trending indicators. I always like to preach with Ichimoku, it's very good at capturing trends. It's absolute dog shit when price is ranging. So knowing what markets you're in obviously takes time and experience, but that's the only way you're going to really increase your hit rate.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm not great at trading a ranging market. Luckily, Bitcoin is a market that likes to trend. If you want to go crazy, if you think you're a good range trader, and I know there's a lot of people who have watched Trader SZ's videos and other people who do ranges, you can have a complete system on ranges. And only trade ranges. I have setups that I look for in ranges, but it's not my cup. Like, it's not my forte. Exactly. But if you want to trade ranges, go into Forex. Oh my God. There's so many goddamn pairs. They're liquid as hell. You have so many options, and they will range for years. I think like the dollar CAD, so USD CAD, has basically been ranging between kind of like 1.3 and 1.35 for the last like 2.5 years. So if you want to range, buy the top, buy the top, buy the bottom. Don't buy the top. Buy the bottom, sell the top. Work with your mid range. I mean, that stuff's absolutely available. But yeah, you gotta know your strengths and then double down on it. I think that's something I use in business as well. I'm very good at certain things, and when I first started my company, I would try and do everything. And I was like, what? I'm just gonna pay someone who's really good at this because I'm not, and I'm just gonna focus on what I'm good at. So same goes for trading. Find out what your strengths are, trending, ranging, whatever it is, and then don't trade. And that's the other problem, right? People are impatient. They see a move happen, right? I mean, how many times have you seen a move happen and you're not in it?
Many, many times. I mean, that's like the whole issue, right? You try to FOMO in, then you realize you just can't chase these green dildos. That's what all the algorithms do. They shake you out, all you FOMOers, right at the top.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot of people have gotten long in the past like day or two, and are going to be into a rude awakening sooner than later. But we'll see. We've been trending up for a while, and I've been seeing since December. I've been kind of bullish on Bitcoin, and all I saw in my feed the entire way was shorts. And now that we're like almost at 10,000, I'm like, I feel like this is, if we're going to pull back hard,
It's here.
I feel
It's
like it's
soon.
here, but again, I mean, who knows? I mean, hopefully we make a higher high on the weekly. I think that would be great. But my ultimate fuck you move here is make that higher high on the weekly, spike into 10K, and then dump it back to 8,000, and then hopefully make a higher low, or else.
That's literally verbatim what I'm looking for. I think a lot of people are getting over invested at these levels, especially the people who've been bearish the whole way up. They're like now they're considering flipping bias, and I think it's a little too late.
I
Now's the interesting area to get into at least hedges, if not net short.
I agree completely. I mean, we've had 5 months of a downtrend, and then we finally had some bullish price action in terms of a range that formed, and then some bullishness December, January, and it's like, to me, I don't know. I just see people, they keep moving the goalposts, right? That's another thing
Yep.
that I did a lot when I was trading. It's like, okay, I'm gonna short 7.9, and then if it gets above there, I'm bullish. But now it's like, okay, shorted 7.9, stop. Well, now I'm gonna short 8.5, and if it gets above there, I'm bullish. And they're just moving up, moving up, moving up. It's like, okay, well, where are you fucking wrong? You know what I mean? Where's your invalidation?
Yeah, your invalidation is supposed to basically tell you where you're wrong and where you should potentially flip bias. I know when I get stopped out, I probably look the other way if we're in a trending market.
Yeah, no, 100%. Okay, so I got a couple more here. So have you ever traded Ichimoku exclusively? If so, what were your results? They know that you use candlesticks and other indicators as confluence, but they're interested in knowing if you think a new trader can trade only using Ichimoku and nothing else.
I definitely think you could to an extent, but I think once again, you talk about price action concepts. Ichimoku is an overlay over price action concepts. If you don't understand the fundamentals of price action, you're going to be hard pressed to understand how to use Ichimoku effectively. So once you understand the building blocks of what type of market you're in, knowing that if it's trending, you use Ichimoku. If it's range bound, you just don't use it at all, and then overlaying price action concepts. I think you need the price action in order to use Ichimoku effectively.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I learned a lot from a guy named Inner Circle Trader, who's not super popular on crypto Twitter. There's an infamous podcast that I hosted with him and Flood, and it was, regardless, a lot of people think he's a demo trader. He's never proved that he could trade live. I don't give a fuck, right? Like, if some guy shows me something on YouTube, I don't need to. If it works for me, I don't give a fuck if it works for anyone else. It works for me. That's kind of, I'm my own proof of profitability. But he kind of said, you don't need indicators. And this is why I was so anti-indicator for so long, because everything in an indicator is price action and volume, right? So
Yeah,
if you
absolutely. No, I agree with
understand price action and volume, an indicator is just a different way to visualize that. But then as I, kind of opened myself up more to other stuff, it's like, okay, well, if it's easier for you to understand price action by having Ichimoku to be like, yeah, now we're trending, as opposed to me who might be like, all right, well, based on this time frame, we've made a higher high, higher low, therefore, blah, 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 then fucking do it, right? But everything has to come back to the candlesticks. Like, if you don't understand what the naked chart is telling you and you can't read that, or the line chart, plus, your volume data, I don't think an indicator is enough alone to exclusively trade. I think, and I think that's kind of a question where it's like, well, can I just buy every time it twists? You know what I mean? Or sell every
Yeah,
time
it's not that easy, right? There's nuances that you only get by literally watching the market and putting your time in, right?
yeah. And I mean, if it was that easy, I think we'd all be.
I don't think I would have shared Ichimoku with crypto Twitter if it was that easy.
Yeah, I would have banged those Serbian girls. They would have been a lot nicer to me.
Love it.
So I think this is the last question we have. So it might be a personal question, so you don't have to answer. This is what he says. What is the typical strike rate for an Ichimoku trader? I've heard trend following systems are generally a 50% strike rate or less, but have bigger R winners. Would be interested in your review on this.
Yeah, so statistically speaking, it really depends on the setup because I don't use Ichimoku in the usual traditional sense where I'm just using it as a trend-based indicator. I use specific nuanced setups like the edge to edge, which give you a predefined exit and target, and usually risk reward ratios of 4 plus, and the hit rate is usually 76% or higher. So it really depends on the setup and how you're using the trending indicator.
Okay, so I mean, if you guys are wondering if he knows his numbers, 76%, he didn't pull that out of the air. So someone's doing their homework in Edgewonk. You guys should know exactly. Like, if your favorite setup is a swing failure pattern at a previous high time frame high, you should know your expectancy on that, and that's only going to come from doing the work.
Exactly.
So couple kind of just big questions to end it, open-ended ones, and then we'll wrap this up here. Current trades, are you in any trades right now?
So currently, I'm still nursing a very, very small position long from 68.72 and an ETH long from 133.
Nice.
That was based on, the 12-hour edge to edge, but that's part of my winner that I'm letting run. It's sized lower than I'd like. I actually missed a lot of my fills, kind of being greedy at the lower end of 6.8. Other than that, I'm basically flat. I don't really consider that, current position just because it's basically positional and I'm sitting in it. I'm paying hefty funding on both now, but that's okay. Other than that, no, not in any positions. Looking to kind of wait for that higher low we just spoke about.
Okay, so yeah, same here. I'm in a long from F from 123 because I'm better than you, obviously. Yeah, so I'm in that. I have a very small Bitcoin log, very similar to you at like 7,000, but it's not even relevant because I've taken so much off of it already. Yeah, I think I'll hedge. I'm aiming to try and hedge kind of nine. I think like 9.9 to like 10.1. I would love to maybe hedge a bit. I think we're in an uptrend and we're starting an uptrend. So I'm not really looking to get swing short. I'm more
Exactly.
interested in just kind of covering my bets and hedging between kind of, 9.8, 9.9 to 10.1. I don't really want to see us. I think my invalidation would be maybe like 10.4 on that. But kind of waiting same as you. Where's that higher low gonna form? I don't know yet. I mean, do you have kind of an estimation area that you're
Yeah.
watching?
So my system tells me, based on the 12-hour time frame, that the mean reversion that we haven't had since the 6.8 pump is at 8.7 right now. It was at 8.5, so I was looking at 8.5 first, but now since we kind of made this higher high at 9.8, 9.7 today, it is at 8.7. So 8.7 would be a really nice fuck you $1,000 down candle from the highs, and I think that's a really nice place to get into a long.
Yeah, so I have a very similar level to you. So for the way that I do this, basically my kind of Cole's notes of the system is I will find on the weekly or the 3-day time frame, I look for an order block or a
Yep.
demand zone. And so if you look at the 3-day, there's a very clear down move that happened about the 19th to the 20th of January before a nice big up move. And so if you just kind of take the median of those two down candles, it's at 8,727.50. And that also lines up quite nicely with, a little bit less than about a little bit more than a 50% pullback as well. So kind of agree with you there. I'm looking there. I have a crazy idea where we could pull back actually way fucking deeper, where I
So
would
do
punt
I.
along. And
I'll
it's
tell
like,
you if you tell me.
yeah, really close to the yearly open, actually, like
7.4, 7.5.
Yes, mine's like 7.6 down to like 7.4.
Yep. That's the
So
macro market structure. That's like the line in the sand I had since
exactly, and
was
it
removed.
can be so simple, right? People are like fibs, or some people love fibs. At the end of the day, take your fucking fib tool out, pull it on any swing on the high time frame on Bitcoin. You'll be amazed how many times it pulls back to that 62 to 79% area. And that's kind of exactly the area that we're talking about here, because what I find, like if you go look at the 6K floor, like every time we made a pump off that floor, if you pull the fib from the high to the low, usually what happens is at the 50%, that's when everyone starts shorting and they
Yep.
get in early. And that's also when a lot of the bulls start getting bullish. So when we had that first dump, we're at like 9.8. We're at like 9K, everyone's shorting. And then it gets up to 9.8, which is that 79% pullback. Everyone's like, oh, we're going to 10K. And that's when it dumps. So I feel like the bar, it likes to go just a little bit further, right? Everyone shorts it at the 50% retracement or longs it.
Everyone's front running and then they get stopped out. And
Exactly.
then
And then they
everybody
flip their
has
bias
some-
right before it
Yep.
actually works. I find, especially when I was learning, I was like almost perfectly wrong, like amazingly wrong. Like exactly where I put my stop is where it turned
It's the
around.
best entry, right? I love to say that your stop loss sometimes is the best entry you can get. So you might want to rethink the setup.
Exactly. And literally start being like, okay, well, what if I enter where I think I'm going to be wrong? And then you'll be amazed at how well that kind of shit works. Okay, so we talked about your kind of thoughts. So higher, low, 8.7, maybe lower. Maybe we'll get this internet clout finally calling the bottom. What about altcoins? I don't know if you trade a lot of altcoins. altcoins. We've seen a lot of majors and stuff pumping lately, which is usually surprising when Bitcoin is also going up. Do you trade alts? Do you care about alts? I mean, I find once you start trading bid size on BitMEX, alts kind of are irrelevant, but
Yeah, so I stopped trading traditional spot alts probably right after 2017 we peaked. I think the last, spot alt I traded was Verge after I bought at 122 sats, sold at 1700 like a Chad and said I'm never touching this again.
legend.
Nowadays, I really only trade, MEX futes that are basically liquid enough. There was a time where I tried to long XRP futes and I ended up being 10, 20% of the OI and I said this is not worth my time.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to the liquidity.
Do you see yourself trading the XRP Quanto?
I haven't yet. I'm going to let it play out a little longer and see kind of where the trend's at. But it's definitely interesting depending on where funding's at, right? I think ETH kind of been hammering people with funding, and I don't think XRP is going to be any different.
I feel like Arthur's scamming us with this funding. I don't know. I have no evidence of that, but I just feel like there's some fuckery about. Last question. So what's your kind of big time frame prediction? So let's say Bitcoin price end of the year is the yearly low in. And also, are you kind of a Bitcoin, maximalist? I consider myself one. I think if you don't think Bitcoin's going beyond 20K, what the fuck are you doing here? Because, you're always going to make more money on the upside, especially if you're trading on a site like BitMEX, because you're getting settled in Bitcoin anyways. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm definitely a Bitcoin maximalist, having watched my net worth go from where it was down after the top and then hodling right back up. I can't not be a believer in the space. I am under the impression that this will be a 6 to 7 figure asset. When, I can't say. I'm not saying it'll be after this halvening. Maybe it will be. But is it going to be $1 million coin one day? I think so. Give it 10, 20, 30 years. Let it become, the supreme store of value. It will reach those numbers. If we're talking about, targets for this year, I'm kind of looking at the 11 to 13K, get a sell off after the halvening, and then break all-time highs. I think we're going to 6 digits within the next few years. That's definitely kind of where my big thought prediction is.
All right, you heard it here first, guys. Bitcoin will be a $10 million coin. So don't sell, hodl, forget learning Ichimoku. Just hold and you will be rich. Awesome, man. I really appreciate this. I think this was a lot of fun. I think this is super informative. So I'm going to post this on YouTube. I'll post it on Discord, Twitter. So whoever wants to watch this, you want to learn about Ichimoku, I think this is a great guy to learn from, great guy to interact with. I know you have a Telegram group, so if you want to shout that out.
Yeah, Crypto Insiders on Telegram. That's kind of where I hang out mostly. I teach people this kind of stuff every single day. It's something I'm passionate about. I think whenever I can explain a concept really well in detail, it kind of proves to me that I know my shit. So I've always felt a kind of closeness to educating the community. So on Telegram at Crypto Insiders. Other than that, really just on Twitter at Captain Cole One, and that's about it, man.
Awesome. All right, man. Appreciate it. We'll get this up right away, and yeah, we'll talk to you. We'll see you at $1 million a coin. We'll be coming over, banging all the Serbian girls.
I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, man.